I'm in control.
Whenever anyone thinks leg day, they think of exactly one exercise. It is the back squat, and that's because it's probably the king of leg exercises. Hits so many body parts. You wind up hitting your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings. You can lift a whole ton of weight on it, and it's just a lift that really works and is synonymous with how we train our legs.
Yeah, when you think about lower body strength training, it's tough to not immediately think of the back squat. So when it comes to building it, we need to find ways that are both advantageous, safe, and effective for people to utilize that, because doing a back squat is way more challenging and way more technical than people give it credit for. So it's important that you can check a lot of boxes. You can make sure your back is strong enough, your posture's in the right position, your hips can sustain it, so you could truly do a back squat safely and effectively.
These are the 5 moves that you should use to train your squat and get that back squat max up and dominant. Let's get to it.
Number 5 on our list is the band resisted plank. When it comes to back squatting, your bracing and ability to maintain your posture in a strong and demanding way is incredibly important. The second thing that tends to lag with a back squat is lat engagement. It's tough for people to really get that posterior chain activated because you have to use your lower body, but your upper body is very, very critical in allowing you to let the lower body just do its job. Doing a band resisted plank, especially from the front side, is gonna allow you to really lock those lats in and create that rigidity through the brace. When this happens, what you really wanna do is make sure you can loop the band behind each elbow, draw it back under where the elbows are directly below the shoulder. From that position, once you can lock into the ground, what you wanna do is slowly walk one leg back at a time to make sure you can maintain that bracing you initially started with, and then hold that position in the isometric spot. Doing that for repetitions of anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds when you build yourself up for about 3 sets can help you start to get the translation of that core engagement along with the lat engagement that you tend to use a lot in your back squat.
When you're in a squat position, when you have that bar on your back, we wanna be in control of it, and that takes a lot of tension through our upper body. The bar is never just resting on the backs of our shoulders. That's a mistake that some people make, but we wanna be able to steer and have that control, and starting with this plank, I think, is a great way to do it. So number 5, bracing, and you're gonna hear us talk a lot about that in this video, but this plank is a great start and a move that you can do almost every day. For number 4 on our list, when we squat, we want to be able to get our hips below our knees, or we want to at least have that range of motion, even if we don't always have to access it on our back squat. And one really, really great way to work on that and hone that is going to be the front foot elevated split squat. And this is something you can do with dumbbells, you can do it with barbells, you can do it with kettlebells, any load works. All we want to do is create a little bit of elevation on that front foot, get into a split squat position. What that's going to allow us to do is a couple of things. One, we're gonna get to train a lot of those smaller muscles, as you mentioned, because we have a little bit of a stability component here. 2, we're gonna be really, really aware of our hip position. We have to keep those square to the front, so we're creating a lot of good core tension. And 3, because of that front foot elevation, our hip definitely gets below our knee on every single rep. That means 1, we're gonna hit that larger range of motion, and 2, we're also gonna get a lot of quad activation as we drive up from that position.
Now, when it comes to split squatting, I do think it's important that we talk about the pattern itself and how to move through it. I've heard plenty of coaches, most notably Dr. Pat Davidson, talking about it where it's elevators, not escalators. So you wanna make sure you're going directly up and down and you're not sliding back and forth on diagonals with that movement, because the goal is you wanna descend vertically and you wanna ascend vertically. And if you can do that within both sides of the elevated split squat, you're gonna see all the benefits by hitting the sides of the glutes, glute medius, glute minimus, some of those other areas that are really supporting muscles, but don't necessarily get the engagement you would imagine from a back squat, but are definitely helping in the entirety of the movement.
Exactly. This is also a really, really great position from which you can kind of explore a little bit and start to understand the idea of your knee getting out a little bit in front of your ankle. Because we can go a little bit lighter with this, you want to make sure on your front leg that you're planting with your toes, you're planting with your heel. But from there, it's okay, especially when we're going a little bit lighter, to let the knee get in front of the toe. And it's a good time to test that.
With split squats, it depends on where you are with it. So if you're loading it a little bit heavier, I do think it's important that you stay somewhere between that 6 to 10 rep range. But if you're going unloaded, say for example, you're adding this as a primer for one of your other sets, or you're doing this on a day that you just kind of want to warm the lower body up, I do think it's important that you start to work on some of those higher rep ranges, 15, 20 reps, so you can start to get into that asymmetrical stance, that split stance that's going to challenge your balance a little bit more, and start to get the feet integrated a little bit extra, which is also such a key component to it. That brings us to number 3, which is the step up. And the step up is such a great movement for this, especially with a downward eccentric controlled, because it checks off 2 boxes. 1, ground contact, how well you can plant your foot and drive it through the floor, which is such a key component to the squat. And then 2, can you control the descent in the best way you can with that step up and step down? The step up is a very undervalued movement when it comes to lower body training because people see it as a beginner exercise. When executed properly, it is ruthless, especially if you're paying attention to the control, dynamics of the joints, and how much intensity you're putting in through your foot.
It is considered a beginner exercise, and that's just because it winds up being incredibly scalable. Whatever you're stepping up to, if you're more on the beginner end, you're gonna use a slightly lower elevation. As you advance, as you gain strength, as you gain body control, we can use a much higher elevation. Suddenly your quad winds up more involved in the action, and suddenly the eccentric winds up taking longer because the entire rep has to take longer. I think the key is the appreciating the eccentric, and 2 great things happen that really translate super well to your back squat from that eccentric. The first, we're learning how to control our way down, which winds up being critical when you get up to those high weights on your squats. Even if you see people who look like they're bouncing, they're exercising a level of complete control on the way down so that they can drive back up, and it's critical to have that, especially as you start to approach your max on the back squat. The second aspect that I think is really, really underrated is that your torso starts to shift forward as you go into that eccentric. And that is completely natural. That also mirrors what happens when we do the back squat. We're not gonna keep that completely perpendicular to the ground torso. We're gonna lean forward some, and you get to mirror that, work on that, and again, explore and understand how your body moves in that position when we're doing the step up.
I do think it's important from a programming perspective that we discuss that when it comes to a large majority of people, I'm talking most people, you should really be operating with a box that's anywhere from 6 inches to 18 inches. A lot of times you'll see people that are going for boxes that are way too ambitious when it comes to their coaching, whether it's a 24-inch, 36-inch box, where now you're gonna start to do compensations because it is such a tall task to do.
In terms of programming, so you wanna keep the reps a little bit lower because again, each rep takes a while. So I like to be around 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps. I'm curious what you think of that.
5 reps, and 10 reps if they're really quality. Say they're using a lower box and we're about to progress to that next range of motion, then we might be doing higher repetitions for that kind of stuff. But again, you'll be really surprised at the amount of intensity that comes with it. I've had people that have never done step-ups before in that way and have done it the proper way for the first time, and after the second set, they are dripping sweat with a body weight exercise.
As we move on to number 2, now we want to get back to another theme that we hit on at the very beginning of this. We talked a lot about bracing. We talked a lot about this idea of hinge, of making sure to control your upper body. You're going to get that with number 2 on our list, the Romanian deadlift, one of my favorite lifts. I don't care whether you do it with the barbell, with dumbbells. I think doing it with dumbbells or kettlebells is the most natural way to do it and the easiest entry point for this. But what we do on the Romanian deadlift, 1, we're going to work on the hinge aspect of things. Remember that the back squat is a hybrid hinge. Every single rep of the Romanian deadlift, we're pushing our butt back. We're gonna get really good hamstring glute engagement out of that. The second great thing with the Romanian deadlift is you're going to be changing the position of your torso in space. You're gonna be dropping your torso closer to parallel as you do the rep. And that is going to, 1, let you explore and understand how your torso moves and what you can control. And it's gonna force you to brace through the entire course of the motion. And that winds up just being a really, really great way to get started and to really understand how your torso moves as you're doing the back squat.
Yeah, it's an incredible exercise. And there's really 2 key cues that I find are very important for people to utilize. 1, keep the bar or weight close to your body. You don't want it translating too far out. As the bar translates away from the body, it starts to create extra torque towards the upper body that might be putting a little extra pressure through that lower back or mid back, which is not really where you want to feel most of the stress through this. Most of the stress should be felt through the hips. So the second thing is you want to look at the cue of thinking that I am not bending over, my hips are simply moving back through space. You can have a slight bend in the knee that you can keep relatively static the way it is, but the key component of this is making sure that you see those hips move back as far as possible. Once the hips stop moving back, you can stop your range of motion and then ascend back up to that starting position. But I think if you can keep the bar close and you just worry about hip moving back, you're in a really good spot to do a strong Romanian deadlift.
Exactly, that key cue, push the hips back. And that key cue also winds up applying on the back squat, which is why the translation here is so good. The first thing you do when you back squat, the very first motion starts at the hips, and we're mirroring that on the Romanian deadlift. The other thing we're doing, like we're doing on the step up, is we're thinking very aggressively about the eccentric. So I like to think 2 to 3 seconds down, even pause once you get down to your position, hold and own that position, then you're getting a really, really good bracing effect in the torso, exactly what we talked about on number 5 on the plank. You get to execute here. I love this. I usually keep it around 8 to 10 reps. You can wind up loading it up. You can get 3 to 4 sets in. It's a great late game lift in your leg workout after you've done squatting, after you've done a couple other motions. I love getting this in late.
It's sneaky because it feels like it's a stretch in the back of your leg, when really the next day you're hobbling around because you felt all of delayed onset muscle soreness that you had from all those eccentric repetitions, but it translates to making a stronger version of yourself, specifically with a squat.
Exactly, and it also translates to the finish of a squat, because every single time you stand up from a Romanian deadlift, you get to squeeze your glutes and drive your hips into extension. That hip extension moment is key for overall athleticism, and it's also the final piece when you're standing up from a squat. If you can't drive your hips through, and if you don't have that glute and hamstring power, you're not gonna finish. So that is number 2 on our list.
And when it comes to the first number 1 exercise that we're looking to do, the goblet squat is going to take the cake. The goblet squat is particularly helpful because what it really does is it forces you to have a reactionary stance that's more upright than you would see with a back squat. When you see back squats, you can see sometimes people are a little too upright or they're folded all the way over. There's a lot of different angles that people may be at. A goblet squat, when loaded appropriately, makes you sit upright and allows you to descend deep into that goblet squat. One of the things that I would suggest to do is sit as deep as possible and give your body some time to feel out that depth of a squat, because that tends to be one of the areas that people are most uncomfortable with. They don't sit all the way down into a squat because they haven't been there before. And if you haven't been there before, your body's a little skeptical of being in that space too long. So you can get yourself acclimated and used to it. And using a goblet squat to do that is a very safe and effective way to translate it.
I think the thing people underestimate with the goblet squat is it's thought of as kind of a lightweight move, a beginner squatting variation, but you can actually load this up. You should eventually be targeting the heaviest dumbbells, the heaviest kettlebells in your gym, because that is gonna force a lot more of that same bracing effect that we talked about before. When I do goblet squats, I wind up feeling it a ton in my abs, especially if I dare to live in that bottom position like you're talking about.
Yeah, I think a common issue is underloading the goblet squat, and you have to appropriately load that weight. So what I would suggest is choose the weight that you think that you can shoulder press and probably add 10 to 15 pounds on top of that. And that's your nice goblet squat holding position. For most people, a nice metric to go to is about 50% of body weight. If you can do 50% of body weight for a nice long repetition set, whether that be 15 reps, 20 reps, whatever you choose, then you're in a really strong spot when it comes to the integrity of that. And you can continue to build up that goblet squat, or once you've gotten to that strength standard, you can decide to go in other directions in order to better translate to your back squat as well.
One of the things that's best about the goblet squat too is it is keeping you in that upright torso position. So everything else we have shown you already is going to help you explore how your torso moves and where your torso aligns, which is critical to the back squat. But being able to understand how to maintain our starting position and keep our torso perpendicular to the ground, which occurs in the goblet squat, is what we get out of it. In terms of programming too, there are so many different ways that you can use this. I like using it either at the end of a leg day. So after I've done, say, heavy squats and heavy deadlifts, near the end, this is a great way that you can pile up some volume while still going heavy. I like to keep the reps high on this, anywhere from 12 to 15, even higher, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a burnout. And I think it's one of those things where if you're trying to do this to increase the control when it comes to a strong depth in the pattern, keep it with lower reps. Go 6 to 8 reps, control on the pause at the bottom, control on that isometric movement. If you're trying to actually keep the time under tension by going through that squat and loading up the front, add the reps on top and create a little more volume. But I really think you can't go wrong with a goblet squat. You just have to know how it plays into consideration with your specific goals.
One of the advantages with the goblet squat too is you can take this to fatigue. All you have to do when you can't do any more reps is drop the dumbbell or the kettlebell. Nice and simple. There's very little risk in the goblet squat when you push this idea. So that is number one on our list. We've given you 5 ways that you can take your back squat to the next level. So get these moves in your workout plan and watch your squat numbers grow.